Equipping our code with the ability to detect and recover from errors is called catching an error. An uncaught or unhandled error will crash our program. A caught error will let our program keep running, and we can add code that specifically runs if an error was caught. We can even add different blocks of code that react to different types of errors. So let's take an example. Imagine we ask the user to put in a list of numbers, and then we would run a for each loop over all the numbers, add them up, and divide the sum by the length of the list of numbers just to get the average. What happens if the user doesn't put in any numbers though? Now it's not a problem for our for loop. It still runs for each item in the list, there just aren't any. It would be like going to the grocery store with an empty shopping list. It's silly, yes, but wouldn't cause your reasoning to crash. However, what happens when it reaches the end of the loop? It attempts to divide the sum, 0, by the length of the list, also 0. 0 divided by 0 triggers a divide by 0 error, which would crash our program. Nothing the user can do should crash our program though, so we need to avoid this. There are two ways we could avoid this error. One, we could simply run a conditional before calculating the average to make sure that the length of the list was not 0. If the length is not 0, we can calculate the average, else we show a message to the user saying, you can't average an empty list. There's nothing wrong with that method, but let's talk about the other approach, catching the error. We can look at this code and know the only possible way to encounter a divide by 0 error is if the list was empty. So if a divide by 0 error arises, that must mean the list was empty. So instead of checking if the list was empty first, we can instead tell the computer, hey, if the list is empty, don't crash. Instead, just tell the user they can't average an empty list. This is catching the error, telling the computer not to crash if the error is encountered, as well as giving it some steps to take instead.